Greetings to everyone. I am excited to come your way through this amazing platform, and it gives me joy to be able to share my knowledge and my experiences with you, especially on the subject of leadership. It's been something that I have been exploring for a while now, and I'm really excited that I can share some insights into the subject of leadership. First off, it becomes very important to take time to define the concept of leadership, because it's one concept that has been misconstrued, it has been misunderstood, and it is being misapplied across the board in Africa. I mean, wherever you turn today, the cry is for reformation as it relates to African leadership. Things are not the way they should be. Africa is very rich in natural resources, but when you look at the quality of life in Africa, it leaves you with so many questions that are begging for answers. Like, what has gone wrong with leadership? What is not right with the way our leaders are carrying on, the leadership agenda that, that brought them to power? Many of them came with very powerful manifestos, and they said they were going to do this and do that and do this and do that. But we realized progressively that they were no more than campaign promises, because we cannot find the realization of those promises. Our focus, however, in this presentation will not be what happens at the top. We are going to try to demystify the concept of leadership, especially for young Africans. It has been said that we are the leaders of tomorrow, but we will not be able to fit into that role of leadership when tomorrow comes if we are not properly positioned today. So what exactly is leadership? What exactly is leadership? In my opinion, leadership is actually the potential to influence a positive behavioral change through a lifestyle that is exemplary. A leader is someone who has agreed to respond to the invitation to service, to the call to service, and therefore is willing to lay his life on the altar for the greater good of the people that he has been called to serve. And so we realize that service is actually the stuff that leadership is made of. Therefore, he who cannot serve should not lead. He who is too big to serve is too small to lead. Those are the fundamentals. Now, many people are not excelling in leadership as we see today because they do not have the right perspective on leadership. To be clear, leadership is not an invitation to the high table where you settle down to enjoy privileges. Leadership is not an invitation to be served. Leaders are people who are willing to go the way because they know the way, and therefore they are also able to show the way. Leaders go the way, leaders know the way, and then leaders show the way. And it boils down to the willingness to place the resources you have at the disposal of humanity for the betterment of the world. So the first reason why many people fail in leadership is because they misconceive leadership. Whatever you misconceive, you will misrepresent. Whatever you misconceive, you will misrepresent. And so the next thing I want to say, even under the aspect of perception, because like I'm emphasizing, you have to have the right perception of leadership if you will succeed as a leader. The next thing I want you to understand is that leadership is not a game of thrones. It's not a game of thrones. Leadership is not about positions. It's not about positions. You don't need an office to move a mountain. Leadership is really about influence. And you can have a position and not have influence. And you can have influence even when you don't have a position. So it's about being intentional. Most of us are influential. We are just not intentional. It's about being intentional about wielding the right kind of influence, touching people in the right way. That is what leadership is really about. So you don't have to wait for a formal, official platform before you can begin to wield influence the right way. That's what we are saying. So leadership is not about having a position. Leadership is not about being sworn into office. Leadership is, because when we talk leadership, people begin to think about manifestos, people think about campaign trails, people think about swearing in ceremonies, people think about campaign promises. No, it's far from that. And this is the reason why many of us sit and wait for the wind of change to come from abroad. We don't realize that we can begin to lead the narrative that we are trusting that we will have, the new narrative. We can give that narrative hands and legs. We can give that narrative limbs, okay, by initiating changes where we find ourselves with what we have. So that's very important. It's not about a position that you occupy. It is about an influence that you yield. Now, in wielding an influence, I want to also make us to understand that it is potential that every one of us has. The potential to lead is inherent in all of humanity. The only problem is that some people never translate this potential into actual influence. We have that potential. Among the young, there is a phenomenon known as peer pressure. And peer pressure, to me, is a manifestation of that potential to lead, because if a certain group of people can be influenced by your behavioral patterns and tendencies, it actually means that you have the potential for influence. You are just not using it the right way. You are using it negatively, because again, let's remember that influence as a word is neutral. All right, it's a neutral word. When we talk influence, then we have to distinguish between positive influence and negative influence. And that's very important for us to note. So leadership is not about positions. That should be very, very clear. Leadership is not also about reaping benefits or enjoying privileges. It's not about using power in ways that undermine the dignity of the people that you have been called to serve. It's not about manipulating people. It's not about seizing the occasion to get as much as you can get while power is still in your hands. No, that's not what leadership is really about. And you can tell that this is the reason why African leadership is taking us nowhere. We are basically shooting ourselves in the leg, because we think that when a person is elected a leader, is an opportunity for them to loot. It's an opportunity for them to convert public resources to personal properties. And that is why leadership is not the way it is supposed to be today. Now, the next thing I want us to understand is the concept of personal leadership. I make bold to submit to you that success in organizational leadership is contingent on success in personal leadership. If you're failing as a person, you should not expect to succeed. Should office be committed into your hands? Should power be committed into your hands? It's very important for us to understand that. Yes, if you are not succeeding in your individual life, you should not expect to succeed if you are given the privilege to lead many other people. There's an African proverb which says, be careful when a naked person offers you a shirt. And there's a Chinese proverb which says that if you want to clean the city, begin from your frontage. And what these proverbs convey is that you have to, there is a sense in which your success in public office is not guaranteed if you are failing in the private endeavor of leading yourself. So personal leadership or self-leadership becomes the bedrock of success in organizational leadership. But what is personal leadership? By personal leadership, we are talking about the ease with which you can moderate, you can manage, you can control your appetites, your desires, your cravings, your urges, all right, for the greater good of a higher purpose. for the greater good of a higher purpose. So you have these cravings on the inside of you. You have these appetites on the inside of you. You have these urges and these desires that are very strong, and they're pulling you ever so strongly. But again, over and against that, you have a higher purpose. And that higher purpose should not be sacrificed in the altar of desires that are passing. And this is what we really mean by personal leadership. Now, you may not be entrusted with the privilege of leading other people in the context of public life, but you always have that opportunity to lead yourself. And if you succeed in that direction, there are many, 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 many privileges that will come to you. There are many openings that will come to you to extend your success into the public domain. And I'm talking about your success in personal leadership. Now, how do you know that you are succeeding in leading yourself? And how do you even get to that point where you start succeeding in leading yourself? The first thing is self-knowledge, or what I may want to call self-mastery. You cannot control what you have not mastered. You cannot control what you have not mastered. Self-mastery in this context really means that you know who you are. You have a strong sense of your identity. You have a strong sense of your purpose. You know where you're coming from. You know where you find yourself exactly. You know where you are headed, and you know where you fit in the leadership equation or in the leadership continuum. You know where you fit. Now, this means that you will be able to define who you are in the light of your strengths, in the light of your potential, in the light of your passions, in the light of your weaknesses, in the light of your character traits, in the light of your limitations, all right, and in the light of your temperaments. You have to have an understanding of that package called you. You have to have an understanding of that package. Then you'll be able to move yourself in the right direction. If I were to talk about the issue of passion, every human being has been blessed with a range of passions. There are things that you want to do to make the world a better place. And when we talk about passion, we are talking about that natural prompting that you have, that natural desire that you have to make a difference in the world through some gift, through some ability, through some talent that was committed to you by the creator of the universe. Now, that will be your passion. And you can know that it's your passion because you excel in that domain almost effortlessly. All right. You don't need a lot of motivation or encouragement to thrive in that direction. And so you can know that that is your area of passion. All right. You can also know it's your area of passion because of the feedback you're getting from your community of friends, from those who know you, from your loved ones. All right. From public recommendations. What people are saying about you can be a very strong pointer to your passion. All right. You can also know it's your passion because you are willing to be relentless. You can go all the way without feeling tired or without breaking down. That is your area of passion. You almost have indomitable might in that direction. All right. You also know it's your passion because that's something that you are willing to do even for free. Your motivation does not come from money or from material resources. Your motivation is intrinsic. It comes from the inside. And so you can go all the way deploying your potentials in that direction because that is something that naturally you are cut out for. All right, that would be passion. You have to understand what your passions are. And then we talk about potential. You have to understand what your potential is. Potential represents the entirety of the things you are capable of doing. All right. Now you have to understand that not everything that you can do is a designation of what you were actually called to do. There are so many things that you can do. All right. But that doesn't mean you should just randomly pick one and make it your life's pursuit. You should be able to go back to your maker, to refer with your maker or refer to your maker or consult with your maker to really find out what you are cut out for. Why am I going to great lengths in talking about these things? The reason is simple. A leader is someone who is able to get on the forefront and change a narrative practically by an exemplary lifestyle. Now, this actually means that you have to identify the domain where you belong. You were not built or designed for global impact, quote unquote. There is a designated niche in which you are supposed to deploy yourself. So don't become a general laborer, all right? Or someone who is random in their operations. If you really want to succeed in leadership, you have to be specific. I, for one, I came to understand at one point that I was called to raise leaders after God's heart, especially within the young people and in academia. Now, when you have understood the particular domain and the specific niche to which you have been called and sent, it will simplify your life so you don't waste resources fighting battles that you were not meant to fight. You have no business winning battles that are distractions to the main battle or from the main battle. So identifying your niche and sticking to the gun becomes very, very fundamental to succeeding in leadership. All right. But this is all a facet. This is all an aspect of your individual package as a person. There are things that make you to tick as a person. You have to identify those. We also talk about your temperaments. We talk about your weaknesses. We talk about your strengths. We talk about your limitations. We talk about all of those things because you have to harness your strengths and you have to progressively deal with your weaknesses, because your weaknesses may become the very stumbling blocks that will make your significance impossible, will prevent you from getting into the spotlight of relevance. All right. So you don't just tolerate them, because whatever you tolerate will grow. All right. So in personal leadership, we talk about the concept of discipline. You know you are leading yourself if you are able to score an A grade in the direction of discipline. And what does it mean to be disciplined? And by the way, discipline is really what it takes to safeguard your values. You may have values that you have developed for yourself, but those values will be nothing but a window dressing if you don't develop the discipline to protect those values. So discipline becomes like a watchman that you have hired, all right, to keep watch over your values, over your standards, over your principles. Otherwise, those things will be reduced to window dressings, all right, or screensavers. So what is discipline? Discipline is actually the price you pay to succeed in leadership. Discipline is also what we may refer to as the daily training that you indulge yourself into so that you do not allow your passion to suffer at the hand of your pleasures, of the things that you consider to be pleasurable to the body. You have a passion. The passion is strong. For that passion to continue to override your pleasures and desires and libidos and those natural tendencies, because we are pleasure driven and we are comfort seeking by nature. For that passion to continue to override those desires that emerge from the flesh, discipline has to be employed daily. And I'm telling you that discipline is a training. It is a training which has to be applied daily. And if I'm to give you a functional definition of discipline, I'll give you two. The first one being that discipline is training yourself, is subjecting yourself to training that brings you to the point, or that forces you to do what you have to do, even when you don't feel like it, because you understand that life is not a game of feelings. We don't live at the rate of our feelings. The easiest way to fail in life would be to put your feelings behind the wheel or to put your feelings on the steering. So the first thing would be that discipline is subjecting yourself to the kind of training that makes it possible for you to do what you have to do, even when you don't feel like it. That is what discipline really is, all right? The second thing I would say about discipline is that discipline is subjecting yourself to the kind of training that makes pain pleasurable and pleasure painful for the greater good of an ultimate purpose, for the greater good of a higher assignment, for the greater good of a higher purpose. You subject yourself to the kind of training that makes pain pleasurable, and pleasure painful for the greater good of a higher purpose, of an ultimate purpose, of a higher assignment. That is another definition that I can give you for discipline. Discipline can also be seen as the progressive process of hardening your willpower through delay of gratification to the extent that you become unresponsive to unnecessary desire signals. The progressive process of hardening your willpower through delay of gratification to the extent that you become unresponsive to unnecessary desire signals. That is what discipline really is. So if you do not employ discipline as a security guard over your values, over your principles, over your standards, you will not make it even as a leader, as a young leader. And if you want to go all the way in the direction of impact and influence as a leader, then there are areas in which discipline must be vigorously and consistently applied. One of those areas that I want to highlight now, before I move on to something else, is in the area of your appetites. Your appetites. Man is a host of several appetites that are bargaining for recognition and satisfaction from within his being. And you will succeed in life and make a lot of waves and strides if you are able to ignore or suppress some of these appetites that are bargaining and yearning for satisfaction and expression from the inside of you. All right. The first one that we may want to talk about is the appetite for sex. And we may summarize that with the word libido. Libido. Many leaders are failing because they do not know what it really means to control their libido. And of course, this is where integrity also comes in. There are many people who are praying and working really hard to be ushered into public office, to have that privilege, to be a commanding officer, to wield influence, to be able to cause people to do things for them at the drop of a hat, at the flick of their finger or whatever. And what they do not even realize is that once you step into office, certain things in you will be tested. For those who read the Bible, you definitely know about the story of Joseph in the Bible. And that aspect of sexual purity was being tested when Potiphar's wife wanted Joseph to come lie with her. And this is a test that every leader will go through, especially as you grow in influence, and then you gather for yourself a group of admirers. You will have to fight and win this battle. I'm talking about the battle of sexual purity. I'm talking about the element of libido. If you're not able to contain yourself in that direction, you will wreck whatever you have spent your life building as a leader. Many people who have been entrusted with public office have tended to take advantage of those of the opposite sex that are under their command. And that is because they are failing in the area of integrity in relation to dealings with the opposite sex. So we talk about that appetite and we summarized it as libido. We have another very, very monumental, very, very classical example in the Bible. And we're talking about this guy who allowed his sexual drive to drive his life, and eventually it wrecked his destiny. All right. And I'm sure if I mention Delilah, the next name that will come to mind is Samson. But I'll leave it there. Now, the next appetite that we need to talk about is the appetite for money. The appetite for money. If you're not able to contain that appetite, then it's going to translate as misappropriation of public funds if you ever have the privilege of being ushered into public office. And now you can begin to see from this exposition why our African leaders are failing us, why our African leaders are enriching themselves at the expense of the masses, because these are drives, these are appetites that they fail to control on their way to the throne. You can already know that somebody is going to fail if he will be entrusted, if he's entrusted with public office, by closely monitoring the way he runs his life as an individual, as a person, because that will only be amplified if he's given an office. even as a leader. So you must be able to govern that appetite. You must not only be a faithful steward of the resources that are committed to you, but you should also have what I want to call financial integrity, or integrity in financial matters. If you want to succeed, if you're going to succeed in leadership, especially first of all at the personal level, and then by extension at the public level. That is very, very important. Another thing that you should take note of if you hope to succeed in leadership, in the domain of personal leadership, and specifically in the domain of discipline, is that you have to tame, you have to govern your appetite for praise and recognition. All right. Like I said already, leadership is not a game of thrones. We're not trying to become prominent. We are not trying to get into the walls who is who, or into the hall of fame. We're not trying to seek for attention or recognition. As leaders, we are only serving. So real leaders don't fight for titles or positions because they are not seeking the spotlight. Their goal is to place whatever they have in the name of blessings at the disposal of humanity for the betterment of the world. That's the goal of leaders. So they don't wait for the cameras to turn on before they put their best foot forward. That's what we are trying to say. So you must overcome that tendency to seek for notice. You don't have to be seen in order to be felt. And real leaders know how to build structures that can survive in their absence. If you build a structure that cannot survive when you are not there, then it is a personality cult. Remember that leaders are called to build movements and not monuments. So it's not about the leader. Leaders must realize that leadership is not about the last man standing. A leader feels powerful not because everyone answers to him, but because he has succeeded to use the power at his disposal to empower as many people as are answerable to him. The power of a leader comes from empowering other people. So a leader does not monopolize platforms and stages. A leader distributes power by empowering other people, by developing other people, all right? And in order for him to develop other people, he has to subject himself to a lifelong process of improvement. We understand that improvement is supposed to be lifelong. Nobody can successfully exhaust the syllabus of the school of life. So improvement is a lifelong thing. You have to keep learning. You have to keep improving. You have to keep getting better. And this comes as a result of exposure to the right content, which will happen if you identify with a mentor, someone who can hold your hand and then show you the way. Mentorship is one of those ways to keep yourself abreast with what is required of you in a dynamic world such as we find ourselves in. All right. But I tell people all the time that you should be careful not to stand on the shoulders of a giant who has become lame or who is no longer growing. Okay. So you need a mentor in that direction to keep upgrading, to raise your game. You need a mentor. And that's very important. Much more than that, you have to become a bookworm. You cannot call yourself an effective leader if you are not a reader. All right. So you identify literature that is relevant in your direction of impact, in your direction of influence. All right. And then you feed yourself, or you feed on that literature. Somebody said that a wise man empties his purse into his brain. All right. And that is that with personal development and capacity building, because in leadership, it's not first about, it's never about you empowering other people first. It's about empowering yourself first. When you empower yourself, it becomes easier for you to translate it across the board. So we are still talking about discipline, and we are talking about the issue of praise and recognition. Even though you are doing your best, even though you are trying to put your best foot forward, you may do all of that and never get recognized, and never win an award, and never be called up for a citation or something. That does not undermine the quality of the effort that you are making, of the sacrifices that you are making. So if you set out on the leadership journey and all you want is to get recognized, you will not go so far on that journey, because you get to a point where you become an eye servant. You only serve and do your best when the cameras are turned on. And you don't have to delay, or you do not have to drag your feet when it comes to doing the right thing because the cameramen are not yet around. Because you are not trying to gain recognition. You want to just put your own sense. You want to just put your own efforts, unite your efforts with the efforts of other people who are doing everything within their power to make the world a better place. All right. Now, that said, I want to talk about why leaders fail. I've scratched it, but I want to get a little more formal as far as the reasons why leaders fail are concerned. We have talked about the perception issue. Whatever you wrongly perceive, you will wrongly represent. We have talked about the issue of personal leadership, being able to lead yourself, which of course is very, very crucial. You should be able to handle yourself. You should be able to harness what you have on the inside of you so that you become an asset wherever you go. And leading you are leading yourself if you have mastered and speak the language of punctuality. If you are able to control yourself, you are able to be organized as a person. You are goal-oriented, you are goal-driven, all right? You are ambitious, but not in the sense in which Caesar was ambitious. Caesar was over-ambitious. You know the story of Julius Caesar, all right? And all that. Now, when we go down that list, we have to necessarily settle on this other reason why a lot of leaders fail today. And I'm talking about the aspect of pride. Pride. You will remember that I have spoken extensively on discipline, on being able to discipline yourself, on being able to govern the urges that arise from within your person, and so on and so forth. Now, let me handle pride for a moment. Pride is having an exaggerated sense of your own importance. Pride is very dangerous for several reasons. Let me share with you one of my favorite quotes in the direction of pride. I always say that the crown does not last on a swelling head. The crown does not last on a swelling head. The problem of a proud person is that he cannot grow, he cannot improve because he thinks he is done with the growing and improvement process. And nothing could be further from the truth. Growth is lifelong. Improvement is lifelong. So a proud person finds himself competing with someone he should be learning from. This is the problem with pride. Having an exaggerated sense of your own importance. Not being able to learn from other people because you think that you can only teach and never learn from another person. You can never sit in class to take notes because you are an expert. You know it all. And those who feel that they have arrived, those who already feel at home, though they are abroad, will never really get home. All right? This is fundamentally the problem with pride. Now, pride manifests itself in several ways. One of the ways in which pride manifests itself is isolation. I usually talk about the isolated leader. Isolated leaders are leaders who function independently, even though they have a team. They don't consult nobody. They just operate and do whatever comes to their head. They don't think that they can fall back on advisors. They can fall back on the consensus of the people before they make decisions, especially decisions that have far-reaching ramifications. And that is an offshoot of pride. Proud people are fond of the independence syndrome. They are fond of the independence syndrome because they have a sense of self-sufficiency. They feel that they are sufficient, they can do without everyone else. So they nurse the independent spirit. They don't collaborate. They are poor team players. When you talk about teamwork, which is one of the fundamental keystones to success in leadership, they are not team players. They're not good team players because they feel that they are self-sufficient. They feel that they are always correct. They don't feel they have to check with anybody when they make a decision. And this is what leads to their downfall. Of course, we know that pride goes before a fall. Another thing that you realize about proud people, like I've talked about the issue of isolation, proud people have the tendency of barricading themselves with protocol. They because they feel so important, they feel that they have to be protected from the people they are supposed to be serving. All right. And the protocol I'm talking about here is unnecessary protocol, because no matter how great or important the shepherd becomes, he should still be able to mingle with the sheep. He should still be able to serve. Because if everyone else serves and you only wait to be served, it means you have outlived your relevance as a leader. Leaders still tie towels, and leaders still serve. Jesus, who is the greatest model of leadership, the greatest example of leadership that we have ever had, tied a towel to teach us that leaders tie towels. All right. So pride is very, very dangerous. Proud people are people who cannot improve, who are not dynamic. Yes, proud people are inflexible. They are fixed in their ways. You cannot help a proud man, because he would simply not bend. And because he will not bend, the only thing that will happen is that he will break at the end of the day. He's not flexible. Yes, if you try to move him, then he's going to break, because he cannot bend. He's not flexible. And that is very, very dangerous. So one reason why many people don't succeed in leadership is because they are proud. They are so proud that they don't see any need depending on other people. So the kind of decisions, the quality of their decisions is questionable. All right. And then they drive everyone into the ground. They lead everyone into a shipwreck. And then you sit back and wonder why things did not go the way they were supposed to go. And finally, let me end by tackling this last aspect as far as leaders succeeding is concerned. Many leaders do not succeed because they lack integrity. Integrity is one concept, one aspect that is missing in African leadership today. And unless we address it at the individual and collective level, we will not see a change in the drama we are now witnessing in African politics today. I'll give you a few definitions for integrity. But when we talk about integrity, we are talking about the quality of consistency. It comes from a Latin word, which is translated to mean continuous, unbroken. All right, which means that a man of integrity is someone who is the same person that he is in the light. Okay, the same person in the dark that he is in the light. We've often said that you should not judge a book by the cover. With people of integrity, you can judge a book by the cover, because what you see is what you get. There is no skeleton in the cupboard. There is nothing to be ashamed of. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. A person of integrity is an open book. They are transparent. You can see through them. That's what it really means to be a person of integrity. So I give you 4 definitions or so of integrity as I bring my discourse to a close. Integrity is doing the right thing, even when you can do the wrong thing and get away with it. Integrity is doing the right thing, even when you can do the wrong thing and get away with it. Secondly, integrity is doing the right thing, even when no one is watching. Thirdly, integrity is doing the right thing, even when there are no foreseeable benefits, even when there are no foreseeable benefits. And fourthly, integrity is doing the right thing, even when it will be met with unpleasant consequences. This is what integrity really means. What we need in Africa today, as far as young leaders are concerned, is integrity. Integrity means that you are the same person in the public that you are in your closet. You don't live 2 lives. You don't try to live 2 lives in one lifetime. You don't have a mask that you are wearing. You are the same person wherever you go. And because we can only trust that which is consistent, in order to be worthy of trust, you have to be a person of integrity, which means that wherever we find you, we can always tell that this is who you are, because there is something about you. There is something consistent about you and about your personality. This is the quality in leadership that is very rare in Africa today. So as a young leader that you are, if you want to excel in leadership as much as possible, you need to cultivate the virtue of integrity, which is rare in our day and time. It is possible. If you win that battle over your private demons, because everybody has some private demon they're battling with. If you are able to conquer your private demons, then I can place a bet that you will succeed if public office were to be committed into your hands. Think about these things. And as you think about these things, remember that the wind of change will not necessarily be ushered from an office. It will not take an office to move the mountains in Africa per se. We must recognize that we have the power to change the narrative right where we find ourselves with the resources we have at our disposal. We have the power to usher in the change that we have been crying for. And it begins with deciding not to compromise, deciding to be incorruptible and becoming exemplary in your lifestyle. What this really means is excelling in personal leadership. Think about these things. And before I leave you, I want you to bear this quote in mind, to have this quote in mind. And the quote is this: life is poured into your cup only once, so drink responsibly. It's been George Charisma, coming your way all the way from Cameroon to chat you on the concept of leadership. I pray that this makes a difference in your life. And of course, I know it will if you decide not just to increase in knowledge, but to give knowledge practical expression by taking practical steps. Till I come your way again next time, I pray that you will do something about what you've learned today. Thank you.